Hello, everybody, and welcome again to a Church Post podcast episode. I'm your host, Alex, with my co-host,
Brandon. What's happening?
And as promised, we are back with the most liked guest, my dear sister, Serena.
That's right.
My. Greetings.
And as promised again,
Wait, hold on. Before you do that, Sister Serena.
Oh, Lord.
Yes.
Thank you for my intro. I will not be singing back today.
Okay. And as promised, as I teased at the end of the last episode, we have the topic of spiritual things, the things that bump in the night, and the things that you shouldn't be doing that are not recommended by the collective community of people.
Oh, my
By the Council of Christians.
Yes. All right. And that topic being demon spirits, lightly things that you don't know about or don't know what to think about, and various applications of that. And my sister is rapidly blinking, trying to determine if I missed something.
I'm just thinking of, there's multiple places that could be a starting point just because of some of the things that we've experienced as a family and some of the things that we've researched. Like our family history, when we look back into like our European line and learning about banshees and witches and certain things like that we feel do have credibility. But then there's also kind of like the more, I guess, mainstream Christian stuff like demons and spirits and things like that. So my rapid blinking was trying to figure out where to start, but I don't know how deep Alex wants to go with the family history part of it.
Well, before all that, because I forgot to do something. I forgot to do the classic spiel. The thing I'm supposed to do that I always forget to do or don't do correctly.
You always mess it up.
On purpose. Well, I already technically messed it up because I forgot to do it.
Redeem yourself,
All right. So, follow us at all the places, which I already repeated several times before, which you should know by now.
Unless you're new. Unless you're new.
And unless you're new, which you could then find them in the description where I always put them. So, like, subscribe, comment, because all those things help us out. And if you have questions, send us an email if you don't want it to be public. Or even if you have comments that you don't want everyone else to look at. Send it to us in the email, which is also going to be in the description. So, yeah, with that, let's continue.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember our initial conversation that we had about this. But I think my general feeling was just that, like, demonology is not really a heavily discussed topic in the Christian community. And I think a lot of people experience things that they don't understand. And it's never really explained. And for example, like sleep paralysis. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's actually what we were talking about. But
that's a good place to start. Sleep paralysis.
Yeah, like scientifically they'll say like, oh, well, sleep paralysis is just your body in between sleep states and it gets confused and it gets you stuck between, like being awake and being able to fully move and function and then like being in a deep sleep where your body's in a restful state. Mm-hmm. And so if you get to a point where you're awake but you can't move, then that means you're in that state. But then they also say that a lot of people report feeling like there's another presence in the room or they feel someone else in that state. So then they've even like explained that away as some kind of feature of like having a dream. And I think what's fascinating about like the science fields, and no shade because I have a STEM major and I'm in the STEM field, but what I find fascinating with like, I guess the psychology fields is that they'll explicitly say, they'll explain something without knowing what it is, but they'll make it a part of like a formal medical explanation. Right. Like, oh, a part of this condition is that you feel like someone's in the room. And it's like, but
what there really was someone in the room?
Or like, why would that even be a thing just for that feeling? You know what I'm saying? It's like, they'll include it in like, oh, it's a part of this, but it's like, but what is the medical explanation for that?
Right.
So anyway, I say all that to say I've had encounters like that where I could see or hear or feel the entity in the room. So it wasn't just a I felt it. I could see it, or I could hear it, or it was touching me. So it was like, okay, I'm not.
I guess. Let me ask this question: did you ever have like physical proof of it happening, like a scar or a bruise or anything like that?
No, I mean, I've never been injured. I don't even know. I mean, other than like that show we watched where that guy was thrown in the Black Forest.
Yeah, that was something.
I don't know.
We'll get back to that story later.
I don't know if there are many accounts of people waking up from sleep paralysis and having like wounds. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say it's not possible. I mean, if something could touch you, I don't know where the boundaries are if it can hurt you or not. I mean, we can get into like, as a Christian, are you supposed to be like protected from those type of things, or how much can they imprint on you? Like, I don't know the answers to that, but no, I've never had that happen.
All right, well, I'm not going to get into who else in our family has experienced this, but other people in our family have experienced sleep paralysis and things like that, because I let them share it if they want to share it, which they might eventually come on the show and do so. But yeah, like, I'll use myself as an example, which is, the famous story with myself, which is the story where I was stricken with torment, I guess, from the words of my family, because I don't remember this, or words of my mom, and then from the testimony of my family, because I don't ever remember these things happening, but they do, which is the fact that I was having night terrors, and then my mom said she had a dream that the devil was tormenting me. He answered her in the dream that that's what he was doing, and I guess to the testimony of my sister, that was happening, right? That I was having these night terrors. I don't remember, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, like every night, Alex was literally like screaming in his sleep, like not like a little, like screaming to the point where we all could hear him from our rooms and would run to his room trying to figure out what was going on. Like it wasn't just. And then what
was my response when you woke me up?
You had no idea or recollection of what. You was just like, what? And it's like, are you okay? Like, is something happening? And he didn't remember them once we woke him up.
Yeah, and this is when I was 7 or something.
Yeah, you were pretty young. Yeah, around that age, I would say, maybe even a little younger. Yeah,
6 or 7.
Yeah,
in that ballpark.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good testimony right there, and like just from the fact that I don't remember this. Right, but as my sister is saying right now, like this is her testimony of this happening, and the rest of my family can corroborate this testimony.
I mean, screaming at the top of your lungs, like you would have thought somebody was in there, like literally physically doing something to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Well, like I said, I don't
spiritually.
Yeah, but let's talk about that, like that.
And our mother actually prayed.
Yeah, that too.
Well, she binded the forces of the entity that she saw in her dream that she had about it. And then Alex didn't dream
any dreams
after that. Yeah.
After that. And I still struggle to have dreams now. Or to either have dreams or recollect dreams in general. But yeah. Speaking of that, can we kind of talk about, I guess, dreams versus reality? Or dreams, what the spirit realm entails, and how does that affect reality?
Oh yeah, I would love to talk about that. So a lot of times, like I used to have questions about this too. Like, you have like a dream or something like that, or a vision, things like this, and is that now reality? I would say, well, yeah. I mean, if you're awake and you're conscious and you're experiencing whatever you're experiencing, then that's within the context of reality, right? Now, when it comes to dreams, like I've had dreams before where, it's, either me preaching somewhere or, me doing something or stuff like that. Now, does that mean that it's going to happen eventually? Not necessarily, but it could be, just, I guess, as a result of what you're thinking about before you go to sleep, right? Events maybe occur during that day or, past few days, whatever. You may dream about those things if you're, thinking about them before you go to sleep. So sometimes it's not really such a supernatural thing about it, but it's really, like if you eat and then you go right to sleep, you might have some wonky dreams, you know what I mean? Or some things really weird happen, right? But I think we want to, there are some dreams that we have that are really, I would say, a foretelling of the future in some sense. But I think once we start putting more weight in that instead of reality or what at least scripture says about these things, then that's when we get into sorcery land.
So I want to propose 3 questions. One question, see, look at me. What?
Because I can feel your brain spinning and plotting a little.
Mm-hmm. All right, so the first question would be, is the reality that we live, the one we see and feel with our flesh, is that the first reality or the second reality? Or is it the lesser reality? Hold on, yeah, I'll get to that. Well, just think about that. Second question would be, is the spiritual realm really the first, is that really the reality in which creation is truly measured? Not the one in which we are currently conscious in. And then the third question would be, like kind of like I was kind of touched on a little bit, does what we do or does what happened in the spirit realm affect what happens in reality, or quote unquote this reality? Or on the other hand, can what we do in this realm affect the spiritual?
Yeah, so I think to the first question of which realm is real, I think this is just my theory. God may have intended both to be real, but for each to be for different entities that are not made to interact, right? Like, we're not battling against flesh and blood. I think that...
But against, principalities of evil.
Yeah, like those things obviously exist in that realm. And I think that depending on people's abilities and things like their spiritual giftings, people can either have more or less insight into that. But I don't think I think that's the point. I think there is supposed to be separation. But I think because those entities are battling against us or interacting with us, there's crossover. But then I think we're supposed to mostly lean on God for Him to battle on our behalf instead of trying to like directly interface back with those entities. Now,
continue.
I think that the way I've seen it, I've seen it 2 ways. I've seen, like, for example, in the sleep paralysis situation, I couldn't speak, but I rebuked the entity in my mind, like with my thoughts, and then I came out of it. So I didn't physically say anything. So I don't know. That's a very kind of like gray area thing. But I also know that, for example, like our mother, she did interact with things in her dreams. So, I mean, maybe there's a connection to like our dreams and the spirit realm. I've also had an experience lately where I felt like I was dreaming, but I felt like I was in the spirit realm. So I think maybe that's why sleep paralysis happens, is because like when we're sleeping, we're in that like connective, like vulnerable crossover state.
Yeah, for my theory with that is basically that our spirits cross over to that reality, right? And if you go too far, it's harder to come back.
Yeah.
Right? So if it's like being in a dream that never ends. If the dream never ends, you never wake up. So it's like if you go too far into the dream, that becomes your new reality.
I can actually attest to a bit of that. Is I've had dreams where like I thought I was awake. And it was hard for me to eventually wake up because I thought I already was awake. Or like, I used to like, a few years ago, it used to be really hard for me to get up in the morning because my dreams were like so immersive and intense. It was almost like I couldn't like easily pull myself out of it. Mm-hmm. So
I guess with that response, any words, Brandon, before I go?
No, good.
All right. So with that response, this makes me think of Revelations. Right? When you get to the end of Revelations, what happens? God's kingdom comes down to earth.
Well, I think that I don't know if the spirit realm we're experiencing is per se the realm of heaven. Like, I think the realm of heaven is what would be coming down to the earth.
But does the realm of heaven not exist in the spirit realm in a certain sense?
I think
is it maybe another layer above?
I feel it may be another layer above, but even if they're both in a realm of a spirit realm, I don't think they'd be I don't know if they'd be the same realm. Or it might be the same realm, but just different locations. So like this, like in my like human brain, it's like, well, that we're in our realm, but there's a difference between like here and China. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I see what you're saying.
So maybe it's the same realm, but there's still a difference between like heaven and hell and where those entities are residing.
But even then, the immaterialness of heaven, let's say, that quote unquote coming down to heaven and basically combining with the earth, basically how Revelations kind of puts it. And that really overseeing the earth, if you really think about it, to a certain degree. Kind of. That, to me, almost makes me think that the spiritual realm is maybe the overseeing reality. Because is that not where God resides?
Yeah, I can see that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, maybe the realm we live in it's created just for us. Not that it was created first.
There you go.
I mean, it wasn't according to the Bible.
Right, even if you go back to Genesis, right, what happens? You know, the order of creation. Earth is pretty much the end, near the end.
Yeah. Yeah. What was your second question again?
I'm not sure. Let me think. I think it was something along the lines of, I need to really write these things down.
Yeah.
Right, but I don't really think about them until the moment.
That's the AI Alex for you.
I think it was something along the lines of, does this reality affect the other? Or does
right.
Affect this?
I mean,
or that was the last question. Either way, it's one of the questions.
I think it can affect it because I think that's what we're experiencing.
I think a part of that is not prayer affecting the spirit realm, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Right? So, or even sin, right?
Yeah. So,
this basically is, I guess what I'm poking at is the fact of spiritual warfare, right? And how what we do and how we pray and what we do in this world affects the spiritual in terms of what's going on.
Yeah, I think we can do things that open up ourselves, that open things up, that, can, be in place that we don't actively realize if we're not being aware and open spiritually.
All right. Let me cut you off, but you're poking on something that I ended with at the end of the last episode.
Okay.
Which Brandon knows where I'm going with this.
Oh yeah.
So
I'm just waiting.
all that to say, I like to say that the club is the devil's church. That you can find every single sin there. I'll leave that as its own statement.
Yeah. Okay.
But also the theology or the theory that certain places your guardian angels don't follow.
Right, yeah.
Including potentially the club as a major one of those places. Because that's like the angel walking into enemy territory.
Right, yeah.
So
outnumbered.
There you go. So I basically advertise the fact that there are some places you go where you're putting yourself at the mercy of the enemy.
At risk, yeah.
And from a spiritual point of view, how do you feel about that concept or that diagram I just showed, especially when it comes to the club?
I definitely feel that. For example, I always say this, I always tell my brothers this, like, I'm a very explorative person. I can be like very into like certain like earthy things and stuff. Like I would love to go in like a crystal shop, for example. And there's one near where I live. And I think the name of it is like Spellbound or something like that. So like, against my curious nature, I'm not going in there because I don't know what this person who owns the shop is operating in. I don't know what their intentions are. I don't know what spirits may have a hold in that physical locale. So I'm not going to go in there like, I'm just going to go in here and, I'm not opening myself up to even the possibility of what, like I always tell my friend this, I'll be on Pinterest or something looking up like, what herbs are good for arthritis or some whatever ailment. And I'll like very quickly accidentally end up in like witchcraft Pinterest. And then it's like, now here this goes again. Like it's so easy to kind of be in parallel to things where people are dabbling or fully activated into things that, yes, can impact you. So I say that to say, if I go into the Spellbound shop and let's say that person is a witch, like a self-proclaimed witch
or Wiccan, whatever,
or
you call it
Wiccan,
these
or
days.
whatever, they may have like what they do is like they'll put spells and rituals on certain products. Like I've seen on Etsy, for example, like let's say I want to, they'll have like bundles of like sage or crystals or whatever as like a gift pack, and then if you read the description, it'll say like, I don't think they use the word blessed, but it'll say like, this ritual was performed for this
prepared
thing.
with the ritual.
Right, prepared with this energy and da-da-da. Yeah. And if, like nowadays people are like very open to that, but if you think about it, I'm like, prepared how? And what are we doing to this stuff? And who are we calling on?
You know what image that came to my mind just now? It's like, it reminded me of like a black, like dark room. And someone pulling it. And then like smoke in the room, like from like incense candles and stuff.
Like it just makes me, like it makes my spirit kind of quiver a little bit, because it's just like, you never know what people are doing, and we're so open nowadays. But yeah, I think I've definitely had that experience of walking into a room and feeling like a spirit or feeling an entity. And not to say that like my guardian angel wasn't with me, but like, yeah, I think that there's places, there's things, and there's people who are operating in things spiritually that affect us.
Right. So, go ahead, Brandon.
I think, of course, God has something to say about this, which is good. So in Deuteronomy 18, if you start at verse 9, there's a list of abominable practices that we as Christians shouldn't engage in. And I think that might also explain why you feel that feeling sometimes when you walk in places.
The element of discernment, which we'll talk about later as well.
But verse 9 in Deuteronomy 18 says this: when you come into that land that the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not learn to follow the abominable practices of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone who burns his son or his daughter as an offering, anyone who practices divination or tells fortunes or interprets omens, or a sorcerer or a charmer or a medium or a necromancer or one who inquires of the dead. For whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord. And because of these abominations, the Lord your God is driving them out before you. You shall be blameless before the Lord your God for these nations which you are about to dispossess. Listen to fortune tellers and diviners. But as for you, the Lord your God has not allowed you to do this.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
And I think that's why as Christians, because I see these shops too, like these, tarot card reading places or palm reading places, psychic readings. And I think, I don't know if this is accurate, but I guess like the sinful nature of us is intrigued by that, like the lights and, the designs of it, just our curious nature. We want to know, okay, well, they read these, lines on my palm. What are they going to see? Are they going to guess right? Sometimes we want to kind of see if they're actually doing what they say they can do. And I think they are to the most part, but God has told us, okay, well, don't engage in that.
All right. So I want to speak on that because that goes into, I think we had this conversation off the books, I think. But basically that drives into what I was talking about of the devil's prophets, the devil's agents, the devil's, soothsayers, so on and so forth, right? His agents in the land. And these things are very real in a spiritual sense because people, I guess, on one level, people want to say, don't give the devil power, don't give him this, don't give him that. But it's like he already has what he has because God has allowed him to have it, right? We can't change that. He does what he does, and he has the power that he has. Us proclaiming to take power away from him is not going to happen until God does it himself. So the devil does have power to do things in the land because God allows him to do it. Right. He has his own territories and his own proclivities to do what he wants to a certain degree, especially when you walk into it on purpose. So when people don't give credit necessarily to the evil of, like I said, a real wizard, a real evil prophet, right? Who can gleam into the futures, who can gleam into evil things of your past or present, who can gleam into what you're thinking and stuff like that, because he is drawing on a form of power that is evil.
And how about this? Like I would even say these like these mediums and these guys that can actually do this. I would say maybe demonically gifted.
I mean, yes,
right? These guys are sometimes more accurate than the church's prophets and apostles.
Exactly, and that's the danger of it, because they speak to a twisted truth, right? It's a blurred, twisted mirror of reality. Disfigurement, right? So it does have an element of truth to it, but it's twisted, and they use that to draw people in and to twist their sense of reality, all for the furtherment of the devil's mission.
Right.
And it's sad because we're so accustomed culturally to those places, right? To palm reading, and I've heard a lot of podcasts and people mention I went to, I forget what they call them, but I went to this medium and they can speak to animals and the dead. And it's hold on.
Well, that's necromancy right there.
Right, necromancy. I don't know about the pet spirits, but there are people who are openly...
That's animalism, which is certain enough degree of worship of animals, or can be associated with.
Okay, there you go. So it's people are openly doing this, and that's their career tag. And it's just I think what's sad is that we don't have that level of openness in terms of giftings or credibility to giftings in the church. And so...
No, I think we do, just in the wrong lens.
Yeah, what I mean is, for example, there's not a
education
prophecy ministry or education on it. You'll maybe have one or two people or a person who you're well, they're the pastor, so they have a gift of prophecy. And it's well, do they? And then, who are the people in the church who actually have those gifts? And are you growing that and highlighting that and giving them the access and ability to people to use those gifts within what's appropriate? Or are you testing their intentions and stuff? We don't have any, there's no equivalent to those things that are in the world. And I think that is why it's also so appealing.
And that's why I think the church does, I think, kind of pulls from that. You have, they call them destiny cards. So basically
this is a thing?
Yeah, destiny cards. So destiny cards is basically a Christian version of tarot cards.
I mean, but then that's just the same thing.
It is, but the difference is they have Bible verses on them, and there's things called prophetic drawings or prophetic paintings. So that painting up there, right? If you look at it, it's really a prophecy in that painting, right? It's really a combination.
Are they biblical prophecies that they've painted? Oh, I see.
And meditation, all that stuff. So that's why you got to stare at it in order to draw out the prophetic meaning within the painting itself.
See,
people are buying this stuff.
Okay.
See, that's a dangerous...
Yeah, because they're trying to make it so equivalent that you're still augmenting. It's God's prophecy is active, whether it's depicted artistically or not. Right? So if you're just I gotta suck out the spirit of God from this artistic rendering, it's no, that's not.
That goes into the idolism or idolatry of artistic images that goes all the way back to the Eastern Orthodox.
Right, yeah.
Which is basically almost a worship of the image or a worship of...
Right, versus God.
Yeah. Which is also stepping into basically what happened with the Israelites when they left Egypt with the worship of the golden calf.
Yeah.
Because even then Aaron was saying worship the calf as you in worship of God, right? But that's not how they were, depicting it. Even then, it says don't write down or don't. I forget if I don't know if this is the Bible or not, but basically don't worship the image of Jesus. Basically, I don't know if that's in the Bible.
So I want to, So someone asked me about that. I think it's in the Ten Commandments, the second or the third one, where it says, you shall not have anything.
There you go.
Made in image of anything above the earth or above the earth or below the earth.
Or even when you go all throughout the Exodus, God is saying, "Don't have an image depiction of me and worship that because that's not me."
Yeah, yeah.
Now again, just to clear this up, a lot of people say, "Well, have a nativity scene in this." Yes, right. The only thing God's saying is don't look to that and worship it.
Yeah, yeah.
So you can have a picture of Black Jesus or whatever.
I mean, that's not really a thing. That's a totally different argument. But go ahead.
But you can have some people have a cross in their house, things like this. But it's basically saying don't worship it because that if you really take it too far, then technically stuffed animals would be under that category, right? Anything that's created that resembles anything that's on the earth. Mm-hmm. Technically, if you're reading it like that, you wouldn't be able to have it. No, all God is just saying is don't worship that thing. Yeah. Don't put weight in that and think that that's somehow...
Or even think that he resides in an object or that an object depicts his power.
Right.
Like, no. Like, if you want to use that as a representation of your belief, even then that's a little dangerous. But even then, like, you have to be careful about that thought. Mm-hmm. Because, like, the cross is a symbol. Right? That's fine. Mm-hmm. But don't think that symbol as the power of God.
Or not even that, but, don't think that, like, if you don't wear your cross around your neck, something bad's going to happen to you at work.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, stuff like that.
People do that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would say this, right? People who, because I think my mom and dad did this a few times, right? Like anointing the house, like the door jambs or...
I mean, but that actually does kind of... There is, I think, biblical precedence for that, which is fine.
Again, they're not putting faith in the oil itself. They're basically saying, hey, Lord, we anoint this house.
There you go.
It's still a version of a prayer, I would say.
Yeah, it is. Like, you're asking God.
Gonna, we know that's going to happen now because the oil is there. It's like, okay.
And I can confirm that definitely works.
Yeah, but it's praying to God to seal the house. I mean, this goes all the way back also goes back to Exodus.
Yeah.
With them paying the blood of the sacrifices on the doorpost to ward off the spirit of death.
Yeah.
Right? This goes all the way back to that.
Yeah. It's not the blood itself, it's the significance of it.
The significance of it, right. It's the belief in God to protect the house from whatever.
And I think that it's interesting that we have those biblical examples and we still won't put as much weight on that as like the examples we have from the world.
But that's why, again, even things like communion, right? People take communion and especially when they get sick or, they feel that sniffle coming on. They're like, oh, let me grab that grape juice and that cracker, right? And it's like, no, the power's not in the elements of communion. It's really just pointing to what Christ did on the cross for us. So you're really doing it in remembrance of Christ, not, I need some money in my bank account, so let me chuck this down real fast. And you know what I mean? A lot of people do that.
And I feel like that's kind of like quick fix Christianity, where it's like you want something that's going to give you like a quick hit of God and solve everything instead of like, well, God gave us herbs and things to live by and practices on how to take care of our bodies where like you wouldn't be sick, really.
I mean, this goes into the mixture of superstition and logical practice, right? So it's knowing when to differentiate them. So it's like, God has given us things on the earth to help us take care of ourselves. This includes herbs and doctors and anything that can help us get through our daily lives or the troubles of life. Mm-hmm. So this is already provided by God, right? This is a provision. So an extra step to that is prayer. Extra step to that is
fasting
if you want to, right? But you've already also been provided, like I said, the herbs, the plants, the animals, the doctors, whoever's out there, right? So it's when you take that and you take it a step further and you're saying, I don't need what God... Basically, you're saying, I don't need what God's provided. I don't need the herbs. I don't need the doctors. I don't need the prescriptions. All I need is prayer. Well, that is not recommended because now you're rejecting what God has provided you to then say, God, save me from myself, basically, because you refuse to take the medicine.
And it's not using wisdom.
It's not using wisdom, which God has also provided us.
Right.
So it's like, don't just rely on prayer. Rely on what God has given us. This goes back to the what Paul and Timothy. When Timothy's like, I've achy tummy or whatever it was, and Paul's like, well, go drink some wine. You'll be fine. Yeah. So like that's like a paraphrase, but that's basically what he tells them.
That's hilarious.
So just like, we don't always have to rely on God to do everything for us. Yeah. He has provided things in the land, things in the earth for us to take care of ourselves.
And I also feel like if we are empowered with what God has given us, we need to have the mentality of that to execute our gifts and do our purpose in the land. But if every single little thing is like you're running back to God, it's like, well, it's like, when you have a child, at some point you don't want them like running to you for every single thing. You want them to be able to be like a functioning adult. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's kind of the same thing. Like, are we really utilizing the empowerment that God has given us?
I think people want to they almost turn faith into something crippling. Mm-hmm. So it's just like, which is what is not meant to be, right? It's meant to be liberating us and providing us a sense of comfort, but it could become crippling if you're putting faith in the wrong things. Mm-hmm. So it's like, faith is there as a trust in God, right? But you're not trusting God by not relying on what He's already provided. So it's like to have too much, quote unquote, like I said, superstitious faith is what I want to kind of call it. Is like, don't get me wrong, like God is, quote unquote, supernatural, quote unquote, not of our current reality, even though He made reality. But that's not really what I mean. What I mean is when you're taking that concept of God supernatural and you're expecting Him to do more than what is required of Him. Mm-hmm. Right? You're expecting Him to basically hold your hand, which is, sure, you can rely on God, but don't turn that into a crippling reliability.
And I also think sometimes the people who want to rely on God or they want God to hold their hands, they're not even listening to the things that He then sends them, right? To, it's like, oh, well, I know I met my husband if I go out and walk across the street and I see a man ride a car with 4 wheels. And it's like, okay, you're making stuff up to try to fit what you want to do. Right. Instead of, if God gives you, like, for example, sometimes God does speak to us in ways that we have to pay attention to. And you have to hone those, like, abilities and skills over time. And some people will get that and they'll ignore it. And they still want to do what they want to do. So it's kind of like you want to take the communion when you're sick, but you don't want to listen to God explicitly telling you to do something or not do something or do it a certain way.
And even going back to Deuteronomy 18, these are, practices we shouldn't engage in. So these are also things that God won't use to communicate to us through, right?
Correct.
So, and I always say this, right? Just a rule of thumb. If you have to wonder it's God, then it ain't Him. You know what I mean? Because God is capable of speaking in a way that you can hear, right? God will be heard when He's speaking to you, right? Whatever it is. And a lot of times we go to Scripture to see if we have a question about anything or a decision you make, it's like, okay, just like going to the club, right? That's not a question you look up at the sky and say, Lord, should I go to this club down the street, right? It's like, well, what does Scripture say, right? The things, literally every sin happens in those types of environments. So it's like, okay, from Scripture and from what you've witnessed on television that that's not a place a Christian should go. But what people try to do is they try to make these, Christian clubs, right? So the environment's still the same. This.
Yeah, right? Christian club. We'll talk about that too.
The music, right? Exactly. The music is, it's kind of similar in the beat and rhythm, but they're just saying God and you put Jesus in it, and that's what I think most progressive Christians do, right? They still do the sinful things, but then they attach God to it to make it. It's like Kirk Franklin, right? He can sing a song that, Beyonce can sing, but he throws Jesus in it. Now it's a gospel song. It's like, that's not how that works.
I don't think there's anything wrong with, like, the beats and stuff like that, but I think, like, it's the intention behind it. It's almost kind of like, it shouldn't have to be in a certain package for you to receive it if it's still about God.
Mm-hmm. And actually, I could even make the argument that it goes against one of the Ten Commandments, which is actually blaspheming God's name.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because when... Basically, what actually that commandment is saying is don't use God's name for evil. Don't use God's name for the image of evil, or for the image bring association with evil, right? Or tarnish it.
Yeah.
So by associating God's name with the club, that's risky.
Tricky, yeah.
That's risky.
Sorcery and all that stuff.
I wanted to actually add to something Brandon said about knowing when God is speaking to you or knowing it's Him. And I want to kind of break it down because some people really don't know how to differentiate that.
Yes. I mean, let's kind of turn this conversation to discernment then.
Right. So then, like I'll use myself as an example. Like the times God has spoken to me, I knew unequivocally that it was God. Like everything in my being and everything that makes up me, spirit, mind, physically, whatever, I knew it was God. Like the same way, and I knew it didn't come from me. And like the same way that when I've experienced evil entities, I knew what it was. It wasn't like, oh, was that? No, like I knew. And I think we're built to have those recognitions.
I mean, the Bible says, my children recognize my name.
Right.
Recognize my voice, sorry.
There you go. And I think we've just dulled it over time, or those things scare us. And so we don't want to recognize it, or we don't want to be embarrassed to say, well, God told me this, so that's what I'm going to do. Or, we will kind of waver on like really stepping out on certain things.
Which makes me want to mention people ignoring their discernment. which
they don't have it.
That,
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times people just straight up ignore it,
and something crazy always happens.
Yeah.
And then what do they say? Oh, something told me that I should have did blah blah blah.
Yeah, so there is me saying like that's not just instinct. A lot of times that is your spiritual discernment, which some people classify as instinct. Sometimes
your gut feeling,
quote unquote.
Yeah.
But it's like it's a mix. Some of it is actually like your guttural, instinct survival instinct, right? But sometimes, or a lot of the time, it's just actually a spiritual discernment that's saying that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
So just like,
and we also have the Holy Spirit who is here.
He's actually who's there, who guides us and comfort us, right? So all these things mixed together, that's a level of discernment.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, well, go ahead.
I just want to add that there's also like a distinct feeling between the Holy Spirit and God and what that feels like and sounds like too.
Yeah, because it is slightly different.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I wouldn't say more than slightly different. It's a totally different tone.
Right.
Because God, if I can explain this, he exudes authority and love. That's the best way to put it.
You know what I could compare it to? It's like, for example, if Alex and I's father comes in the room and he calls one of our names, it's like we're like, okay, yeah. But if Alex says something to me, it doesn't have like the same level of authority. I may listen to him, I hear him, I resonate with him as my sibling, we're kindred spirits, but it's not the same. It's not the same authority, it's not the same tone, it's not the same weight, power, all of the things, because he's not my father.
I feel like your response would be different too.
That too.
If Alex said, Serena, you'd be like, what does he want?
Yeah.
But if your dad said Serena, you go upstairs to see what you know what I mean, with haste.
With haste.
but yeah, I actually want to get on that because God does have a weight behind his words.
Right.
And that's the difference. Like the Holy Spirit does have compulsion, I guess, is one way to put it. But it's not the same weight.
It's almost like more of a gentle suggesting.
Yes. God has weight.
Right. God is like, it's a commandment. It's like, you can choose to ignore it, but it's
at
your own peril.
I don't recommend it.
It's at your
exactly.
And I'll give an example of that. I was leaving my family's house one day. I was going back home. At the time, I lived about an hour south of where their house was. So I had a long drive ahead of me. Yeah, and I was coming down one of the main roads. I was approaching an intersection of the highway. I was approaching, I don't know, we want to get into geographicals on the podcast. But anywho, I was approaching the highway. And I was sitting at the light in the left lane, the turn lane. And when the light turned green, I went to, put my foot on the gas. And I can say something said, but I heard a voice that said, look left. And at this particular light, I didn't ever really do that. Like, if the light turns green, I'm going. At that time, I didn't necessarily, let me look left and right and make sure, I just wasn't in the habit of doing that at the time. And sure enough, I looked left, and there's this car, just killing down, just ripping down the highway. They had to have been going 100 miles per hour or more. And, you do the calculation in your mind, and you're like, there's no way they're going to stop. Mm-hmm. There's no way I can... If I had driven, they would have hit me right where I would have been at in the intersection by the time that they got to the intersection. They would have T-boned me on my driver's side.
Oh my.
So anyway.
You've been finished.
Yeah, I would have been done, for sure. So I'm looking at them coming. I'm not moving at this point. But I see the car next to me in the right lane has started to drive through the intersection. So I'm like, oh my God, they're going to hit them. Mm-hmm. So then I'm beeping, trying to get the other car's attention. So I guess it worked. They stopped. They stopped just short of this car. And of course, the car zooms through the intersection. And I'm just in the car in shock. Wow. Not only did God just save my life, but he enabled me to have the insight to save someone else's. Because I could have not reacted like that. And I'm pretty sure that person would have been killed.
Oh, yeah.
So, if I had ignored that could have literally cost me my life and or someone else's. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I think that happens a lot. All
right, so I guess I want to touch on how that voice feel. Did it feel authoritative? What was the essence of the voice?
She listened to it, so
I know, but I want to see whatever.
It wasn't a yell, but it was a definitive do this. And it was kind of okay. And it's not like I said, I hadn't put my foot on the gas yet. So it wasn't like I'd already was driving and I had to slam on brakes. I think if it was that, it might have been more of like a yell, but it was kind of like, and I had enough time to react. You know what I mean? Like I had enough time to kind of see the person coming, get the other person. So I mean, if I had to, I could have put it in reverse and really kind of got myself out the way. But it was a gentle commandment, but it was enough where I was like, okay, that's what I'm gonna do. It was no question in my mind of I ain't looking left or I'm fine or whatever. It was just kind of like, okay, like what's going on down here that I need to be looking at? And it never occurred to me that, oh, there's going to be a car coming. Or I didn't know what was down to the left. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it was enough where I didn't question it. Like I knew it was God. And I think that's the thing where I've had enough encounters in my life where like when things like that happen, it's like, okay, God is cueing me. It's not like, oh, what was that? Anyway, and I'm going to keep going. It's like, okay, God is telling me to do something. Let me do it. Yeah, let me adhere to what's going on. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what I mean when like you have to kind of train that ear and train your reflexes to give weight to that voice and those feelings instead of just like, oh, whatever, la la la. It's like you really got to train yourself to like, okay, when I hear this and I have to really like listen.
I don't even say that. I mean, look at Balaam, right? Balaam had no practice hearing God's actual voice. And what God told him to do, he did it. Even though he was a wicked prophet, obviously. But I think, like, that's what I'm saying, as Christians, you know what God's voice sounds like.
Well, when I say practice, I mean, sometimes we know, but we're not in the practice of being obedient.
Obeying, right. Following direction.
Oh, trust me, you'll learn, trust me. You're going to learn. You're going to know today.
Exactly. You're going to learn like Jonah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can choose to be hard-headed. Like, you can choose to not... Like, you may know it's God, but you can choose to ignore it. But some people will hear it, and they do just that. They ignore it. They're not sure. Because I've also had moments where I've heard God's voice in another voice. I've heard him in, for example, my father's voice. Mm-hmm. My earthly father's voice. Which can be confusing, because you're like... For example, I'll give an example. So, I've had this happen a few times where like if I'm sleeping, and this was while I was still living with my parents, where I was asleep and I heard my father calling me, like let's say early in the morning when we had to go somewhere or something. So because I think he's calling me, I'll get up and start getting dressed, mm-hmm. and then later I'll be like, wait, he's still asleep. So then I'll be dressed, and then I'll ask him later, like, did you call me this morning at, like, 5 a.m.? No. Are you sure? No. It's like...
This actually happened to me a few times, in terms of, I mean, thinking it was Dad, but then Dad either not in the house.
Right, not in the house, not awake, not on the same level.
I mean, both times that happened, he wasn't in the house.
And I think sometimes God uses familiar voices to get our attention, to get us to do something, but then you look back. Because I feel like my mom told us a story about that, where she heard her father calling her, and her mm-hmm. father at the time wasn't in the house. I mean, there was no way for her to... because someone could say, like, well, maybe your father did call you and he forgot. Like, no, he wasn't in the house. So there's no physical way that he could have. Mm-hmm. Back to our mother's example. But I think sometimes God will use a familiar voice to get your attention and get you to fall into alignment until you can train your ear so where he can speak to you in his voice, and it's almost like you can learn the feeling of something, but because it's so new,
you can learn the authority and the feeling of God's voice from the authority and feeling of your father's voice in real life.
Because I feel like when our mom experienced this, she was also like very young.
She was in her teenage years.
Yeah, and so I think that it's almost like the training wheels of God's voice. It's like he'll give you like, here's a familiar voice to get you used to the feeling. And then once you get used to that, I can speak to you in my voice, and you know the feeling. And it's like, oh, okay, now I understand this. So I think that God can be very subtle, and he can like train us in ways that we have to be open to and mindful of.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, like, because I know some people are listening, they're like, man, Brandon, really, man, Brandon? Because I used to be like, and I'm still one, I'm very careful about saying when God's doing something. Just me personally, right? Because it's, unless you, like you said, unless you study and you've really had that training, right? Where, okay, you can discern whether it's God or whether that's just a pizza you ate last night or the movie you watched, or you know what I mean?
Or just a hallucination.
Yeah. And so I think, like,
in case you're on psychotics.
I think a lot of people, especially within the evangelical church, right, as a whole, right, they're very quick to say, "Oh, God told me," right? And I think Serena's example is, I believe it, right? That makes sense. But I've heard people say, "Well, yeah, God told me to go to Food Line and this time and get this type of turkey here for Thanksgiving, and told me to buy this specific car because the recalls are on these cars, but not this one." And it's just like, okay, like, again, if it happened, then great, but then is, again, I just try to be very careful about, and that's the thing too. Like, I don't have a lot of those experiences, right? And I think sometimes people will say, they'll look at, maybe you guys perhaps, and say, well, I've never heard God speak to me in turn before. I've never heard God do that. And so then they feel like, well, something's wrong with him. And it's like, no, like, God doesn't have to always, speak to you that way,
Yeah, I mean, I think God can speak in different ways. Mm-hmm. I can give other examples of how he's spoken to me. So I think he may not speak to everyone in the same way, but I think, like, whatever that way is for you, get familiar and accustomed to that. And we all have different spiritual giftings. We all may be sensitive to his voice in different ways as well, I think.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I think we kind of got slightly off topic, but I kind of want to loop back around.
What was your third question?
It's done by now. It's not important. Mm-hmm. But I kind of want to loop it back around to discernment of evil, discernment of places you shouldn't go, that kind of thing.
You know the story we should tell? When we were watching that show.
Exactly. I was thinking of that.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Black Forest.
No, that one too.
That too.
I'll let you tell the Black Forest one, and I'll tell the other one.
Yeah, so Alex and I were watching the show like years ago. And it was one of those, like, people who go around the world and, like, investigate cultural myths and stuff. Mm-hmm. So they were somewhere in Europe. I forget the country. But they had this black forest that was, the locals were afraid of.
Some country in Europe somewhere. I think it might be Germany. I'm not 100% sure on that.
It might have been Transylvania or something crazy. I don't know. But, the locals had legends where people had gone into this forest and never came back, or didn't come back until years later. And I think Americans sometimes are, like, very...
Well, first of all, rule number one. Always listen to the locals. Yeah, believe the locals. Go ahead.
So, Americans being Americans, let's go explore and see if it's true. So they go in and actually what made it even worse was that they'd been there before. This was their second time back. So they
something did happen last time too.
Yeah, like, so they show footage from the last time.
Mm-hmm. This guy flew up.
And they had I think it was their cameraman. One of their crew people, like, not one of the main people at the show, got thrown,
smacked
30 feet across, like, a field. There's the thing with this forest is there was this circular field
in the middle.
That
didn't make any sense.
That didn't make any, like, natural sense, and it was, like, hot on the radar.
Like a perfect circle. I'm thinking perfect circle.
Right, like, there was no, geographical reason for it to be there.
And no one ever goes in there, so it's like, they didn't do that. And the trees should be growing in that circle, but they don't.
But they're not, yeah. And so they were in this circle, and he was standing on the edge of it where the trees were, and he got thrown, like, 30 feet, like, further into the circle. And so the people filming, like, called him up. Like, I think he quit the show after that.
Oh, yeah, he quit the team.
So he quit the show. So they call him up, like, hey, we're going back to the Black Forest. You want to come along? The man hangs up.
He was like, yeah, I expected that response.
And he's like, it's okay. He's going to call me back. So we're like, yo, this man is traumatized.
So back to the flashback to him being like thrown 30 feet. Well, he was more like smacked 30 feet.
Yeah, it wasn't like you saw him lift and then get thrown.
No,
it was like he was standing still, and then all of a sudden he was flying back 30 feet.
So they showed like a image of his arm, right? When after it happened, this dude had like 3 long scars on his arm,
like gashes.
Oh wow! Like something literally physically like wounding him,
right? Like it looked like something with claws, like grabbed him by the arm and flung him. Yeah. And he still had the scars. So the man ended up coming back for the second round, and he still had these scars in his arm. Like they showed them on camera. I mean, people can argue like, oh, maybe it was hair and makeup, but
no, they didn't fake that.
That's what it was. It wasn't given hair and makeup.
They didn't fake that.
Yeah. So anyway,
especially that dude's responses and like
you could tell he was traumatized, and he was only there on like
trying to figure out what happened to him, basically.
Right? Like trying to get answers or like, okay, I'm doing a favor for my friend, but I really don't want to be here. Right. So anyway, so they're going into the forest. And they showed the forest, and it was still daytime. And Alex and I were literally sitting there like, no.
We were like, that feels like evil.
We could feel the evil like through the TV. Like not to sound dramatic, but like seriously, we could feel it. And we've all seen horror movies or like people trying to make forests look spooky cinematically. Mm-hmm. Like we've all seen that. But it wasn't that. It was deeper than that. It was like you could feel like the evil presence in that forest. So anyway, so they go in and things start to happen that don't make sense. But of note, the same guy who had gotten thrown before, he gets to the clearing and starts getting disoriented. Like they're watching him on whatever camera they have up. And he starts kind of fumbling and stumbling. And they're in his ear, like, so-and-so, you okay? And he's like, kind of, just looks disoriented.
Dude collapses.
He passes out. And so they're like, okay, we got to quit. And they're like, I'm literally getting chills. But they're like, okay, y'all, we got to quit. Like, if we get to the point where any of our crew is getting, like, injured, then we're going to stop filming. We're going to get out of here. So they're like, all right, shut it down. But they're still filming, like, them getting to him. So they get to him, and they pick him up, and the man's eardrums are bleeding. And they're like, are you okay? And he's just like, he's clearly like dazed.
Yeah, he's just oriented.
So they're like, all right, let's get out of here. So they get out of there and they, interview him later. And they're like, what happened? And he's like, I just heard like a high pitched ringing. And if something's off with your ears, it'll throw your balance off. Mm-hmm. So that's why he was kind of like stumbling. I think that was it. I don't think he had any other injuries, or was there something else?
No, but there was a picture. You know how they're filming and stuff?
Yeah,
cameras
like
pick up some
stuff.
Yeah, camera picks up things sometimes. Basically, I'm getting chills. Basically, it showed. There's basically the best way I can describe it is this giant centipede energy monster.
Oh, I forgot about that. Was that show or was that something else?
No, that was that show.
I forgot about that.
I'm getting chills as regular. Yeah. Anyway, this giant energy millipede thing. So basically, from the first time they went there, that's what smacked them. No, basically showed a picture of basically right while he was flying. Mm-hmm. That was right next to him.
Yeah, I forgot about that. And when we say like a giant centipede, we mean like this thing's like 50 feet tall.
Yeah, or like it's significant. It's bigger than a person.
Or am I thicker than a person? Maybe it was 25 feet tall.
Yeah, I would say anywhere between 10 to 15.
Okay, maybe I'm being dramatic. Okay,
yeah, 10 to 15, basically bigger than Brandon. Taller than Brandon, whatever you would call it, longer than Brandon.
Yeah.
Thicker than Brandon. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. So 10 to 15 is what I would say. I won't say, or maybe 10 to 12. So, yeah, that was that in that picture. So, yeah, that's that story. Point being, if it's called the Dark Forest and it's full of evil spirits, and people aren't supposed to go there, and the locals tell you not to go there, what do you not do, Serena?
You don't go to the Black Forest.
Exactly.
Never go there.
I mean, I'm sure, like, viewers may be like, well, what is this giant centipede and how is that biblical? And short answer, I don't know how a giant centipede is biblical.
I mean, my answer to this would be it's a demon.
Right.
That would be my answer. This goes into typically, territories and principalities and powers. And
speaking of principalities, I think at the time we'd asked our mom about this because I think we were a little confused. Like, how does this work? Like, if we have domain of the earth, why is there this place that exists that we can't go? Well, and she said sometimes we turn over territory to the devil.
Right, yeah.
And who knows what was done, right, in that forest and its history, but clearly it has been turned over to those forces, and that is now their territory.
Right, exactly. And this goes back to what I was saying before. You don't go into enemy territory on purpose.
Yeah, because you might get flung by a giant centipede, and then what you going to do?
Right. Now, I also
you can't even see it. It's in the other realm.
Exactly. And I think that also, the circle potentially is a portal to...
I agree that it's a portal.
Yeah, portal to spiritual realms, potentially. And that maybe some, in the distant past, some evil cult of demonic forces, whatever, made some kind of weird ritual there and did something weird like that. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
There's probably a lot of bloodshed and
those
other things that we know can cause issues on Earth.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case, and that's why it's been turned over as basically a demonic stronghold. It's basically what I would put it, or at least a place thin, quote unquote, in the spiritual fabric of reality.
Your turn.
Yes. So
I don't know. We should name the show, but we'll just say a show.
I'll call it the rah 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 rah.
Oh my god! Not discreet. Okay, fine.
I mean, but that's not even the right show. It's a different show. Like, right? So that's
what I'm talking about. Yeah.
So the other show is not the show I'm talking about, but it's similar enough that people might be able to realize what I'm talking about. Anyway, so we're watching this show, and basically one of the characters.
We were watching it at different
times, or the same time, different places.
Yeah.
Oh.
Alex was at home at where he was living. I was at where I was living.
So basically, one of the characters, he starts doing this ritual to see into the future or something like that.
Speaking this language, this
ancient language or whatever. Right?
And the character is actually a warlock, witch or something.
He's a druid, which is, I think, is going to give away the show.
Go ahead, sorry.
But anyway, he's a druid, right? An ancient druid, whatever. So he does this ritual, and as he's doing it, like, I start feeling uneasy. I'm like, something don't feel right here. And as it continues, the actor is doing it, and like it starts getting weirder and weirder and weirder. And by the end of it, I'm like, that was evil. And then the actor stops, and he looks confused and discombobulated. And the other actor next to him is like, "Are you okay?" Like, and it seemed like a regular, like, "Are you," like an actor saying, "Are you okay?" It felt like a real, "Are you okay?"
It felt like they broke character for a second.
Yeah.
And the directors, they just kept rolling. No one said cut.
Yeah, no one said cut. So the actor was like, "Are you okay?" Like, he felt serious. Like, "Are you okay?" And then they just continued on. But you could tell, like, the actor who did it, he was discombobulated and slightly confused.
Yeah.
Even though he played it off very well.
Right, he did. Yeah.
All that to say, when me and Serena reconvened later on I was like, "Yo, did you see that?" And Serena was like, "Yeah." Like, "Did you feel what I felt?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "It felt evil, right?" And she was like, "Yeah." And so it was like, we had the same feeling at the same time at different places, but we caught each other and kind of found we felt the same thing. So it was just like, that right there is telling you something about the fact that just wasn't right. Right.
And then, to expound on Alex saying feeling evil, what the feeling was for me was I had shivers. I felt like a shiver or like a spark go through my whole body. Like, it was either from my head down or my feet up. And then I heard ringing in my ears.
For me, it was slightly different. For me, it felt like Serena had more of a physical response. I had more of a spiritual response.
And then I had that as well.
Yeah, I had more of a disturbance. Like a tangible weight of, like, you shouldn't be listening to this.
Right.
Like, this is not for your ears. This is not good.
And it actually sounded familiar to me, but we'll have to go into that another time.
I mean, basically, I would equate it to demonic tongues, is one way to put it.
Oh, man.
Yes. And we'll kind of we'll leave that there.
For now. Yeah.
But yes, overall, I would say, once again, playing with forces we don't understand. And not only that, but come to find out that the show they had advisors.
Was it that show or was it
It was that show.
Oh.
They had advisors of Wicked and Witches or whatever. I mean, it's that show and American Horror Story. Both of those shows.
It was a teenage witch one we were thinking about.
Well, that one too.
Oh, wow. I didn't know
it's all those shows.
Yeah.
It's American Horror Story, it's that show, and it's, Sabrina and whatever.
The Adventures of Sabrina, which is a remake of Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so all three of those shows have advisors of Wiccans on them, or did.
So basically, all that means the writers were consulting Wiccans and witches to write the show. So as you can imagine, some actual stuff was getting sprinkled in there, which is what Alex and I were feeling.
Yeah, I will say this. Not recommended.
The show?
I mean, just the feeling and just exposing yourself to that.
Yeah, like...
I mean,
I can't remember. Did we continue to watch the show?
No, I didn't.
I think I did out of like, let me see if this happens again.
Yeah, I was kind of curious about that. But then at the same time, well, that's
I
kind
didn't
of what
watch
I
that
did.
scene again.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what I did with Sabrina the Teenage Witch, or whatever it's called. I kept watching that strictly because it was touching on a lot of things.
Yeah, for educational purposes.
Educational purposes, exactly. But as a Christian...
be careful what you subject yourself to.
Exactly. I would say don't watch it just because if you're not prepared and spiritually covered and spiritually aware of what you're seeing, what's going on, then you could easily expose yourself to things you're not prepared for.
I guess that's what it is probably Alex and I feel a little more like assured in our ability to recognize something and either to proceed or not. But if you don't have that, please.
If you don't get that discernment to a certain level, don't tiptoe. You shouldn't tiptoe.
Yeah, be careful, guys.
I'm just saying, like, as a Christian recommending this, well, I guess I don't want to say we're specialists, quote unquote, but we have a certain level of spiritual understanding and discernment that we understand what lines not to cross. And if you don't have that understanding, you can easily put yourself in a spiritual situation you don't want to be in. And that's what I'm saying. Overall, I recommend not watching it, strictly because if you're not aware of where you stand, exposing yourself to that is a bad idea.
And I'll give you an example. Like, you could watch something like that, and then next thing you know, you have a new interest in dark forces or things that you didn't have before.
All right, you start having sleep paralysis issues.
Yeah, or you start feeling depressed, and you're like, where is this coming from? I've never dealt with this in my life. And it's like, it's coming from that show and that witchcraft they had embedded in there.
Exactly. You was exposed to things.
And also, I think a TV can be a portal.
I mean, it is. That's how we feel evil through it and stuff.
Your
and so on and so
screen
forth. Yeah. I mean, it is.
Is a portal, guys. Your phone, your TV, your computer. I don't know, where the biblical manual is on that, but I've experienced that, and I've known others to experience that. So be careful on the eye ways.
That's right.
Indeed. Okay, so that brings us to the scripture Brandon's found.
Yep. It's going to be Matthew chapter 15, verses 10 through 19. It says this. After Jesus called the crowd to him, he said to them, "Hear and understand. It is not what enters into the mouth that defiles the man, but what proceeds out of the mouth that defiles the man." Then the disciples came and said to him, "Do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard that statement?" But he answered and said, "Every plant which my heavenly Father did not plant shall be uprooted. Let them alone. They are blind, guides of the blind. And if a blind man guides if a blind man guides a blind man, both will fall into a pit." Peter said to him, "Explain the parable to us." Jesus said, "Are you still lacking in understanding also? Do you not understand that everything that goes into the mouth passes into the stomach and is eliminated? But the things that proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, and those defile the man. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witnesses, slanders. These are the things which defile the man, but to eat with unwashed hands does not defile the man." So Jesus is kind of responding to, the Pharisees, they, they had a body of work called the Oral Torah, right? Which basically is a whole separate Bible they created.
Book of laws, basically.
Yeah. You can see this in the Mishnah. You can see this in the...
Wait, they had their own Torah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So you have God Torah, the written Torah, which Moses gave. So that's, what we follow today. And then the Pharisees themselves created a whole different body of work that they claimed was from God, but it wasn't.
Basically, like, what was it, like the Book of the Elders or something?
Yeah, tradition of the elders.
Wow.
Right. So you can see that, in rabbinic writings back in the day. But anyway, so one of the commands that the Pharisees had was that you had to wash your hands before you ate, right? And this kind of maybe where we get that concept from ourselves when we wash our hands before we eat. Right?
I mean, in all honesty, it's just hygienic.
Yeah.
But they made it like it was a spiritual teaching.
Yeah, they actually, so basically how you would do it is you take a pitcher of water and with your right hand, left hand, palm up, right, pour water on that. Switch hands, do the same thing, pour water on it, switch hands again, palm down this time, and then switch hands. So it was really just weird. So Jesus obviously forbade his disciples from following that because that's not God's law. But the Pharisees, got mad that Jesus didn't do it.
Right? They were just out here making stuff up. Huh?
Yeah, they're like, you guys are eating with defiled hands. But Jesus, no, what they're doing is actually defiling them as a person. So it's not what you eat, right, or the procedure you go through before you eat. It's the evil that's within you,
your heart,
that defiles a person,
mm-hmm.
right? And so I kind of thought that went well with how you guys were saying at the end of the other clip, like how be careful what you put in, right? Because if what you feed into your body, then that affects you, and then that affects you, then something's going to come out of that ain't good.
Yeah, I mean, that goes from what you see and what you participate
mm-hmm.
in. So yeah, that's, evil can come through a screen, quote unquote, because you're feeding your spirit by what you're watching. Just like how, PTSD, right? Mm-hmm. You can get PTSD from what you see, not necessarily what you participate in. So just seeing something detrimental, quote unquote.
But the thing, that's because, in terms of how our brain chemistry works, it's actually been proven that when we're watching a show, even if it's a fictional show and we're seeing someone get killed or mutilated or something, our brain doesn't know that that's fake.
Mm-hmm.
It thinks it's real. So even in us watching shows and watching things, we're still kind of traumatizing ourselves.
On a regular basis.
Well,
this is video games too, right?
Yeah, I mean, and actually, I stopped watching a lot of shows, and I'll give you, and maybe I'm just this sensitive, but my husband was watching a show. I can't think of the name of it, but there was a scene where they were in a battle, and the soldier.
Was this a modern battle, or was this olden times?
A modern battle, and the soldier got his leg. There was was it a grenade? I think it was a grenade went off. And they
a grenade or a mortar?
Maybe a mortar, because it was a larger explosion. And so basically, it blew his it
blew his leg off.
It didn't blow his leg off, but it fractured it to the point where it was blown into, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay.
And so he's throwing up. He's pulling out his kit. He's trying to treat it. I'm literally under the covers in tears. And I mean, this was one of the favorite characters on the show, but just trying to process it, mm-hmm. and just trying to oh my God, what's he gonna do? And then he's it was just very graphic for me, but I'm already sensitive to that kind of stuff.
Wait, was it the SEAL Team show? Or?
I think so.
I haven't seen that. I've seen I've seen the first and second season. I haven't seen the rest.
That scene took me out.
That's funny because I don't know if my grandma would appreciate me saying this, but I love you, Grandma. But anyway, so we watch Law and Order, right? And, Law and Order is just a crime TV show, whatever, fiction. So every time that music, that ominous music plays, and
something bad happened.
Yeah. So she used to hide in the closet, right? She still wanted to see it, so the door
not
would be
the closet.
The door would just be barely open, and she'd be peeking through. Brandon, what's happening? Y'all tell me what's going to happen. I want to see it. But that's the thing. I'm saying, our nature, we want to know, we want to see it.
But we don't really want to.
But we really don't want to see it.
We are not supposed to be exposed to all that stuff.
And some people really have some people I would say, have a higher tolerance of that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Definitely.
They'll look at
because some people are already traumatized.
Yeah.
And they're numb.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, some things affect people more than I can see blood and be fine. Mm-hmm. If I'm seeing bones and wounds and open body, I'm oh no, I can't do that. No, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And that's a survival response as well, right? Like, think about it. If you're out in the wild and you're seeing someone's body blown open, your body telling you, it's time to get up out of here because I might be next, right? There's something in us that's built to respond that way.
Yeah, like you see someone been mauled by a bear. You ain't going to stick around to find the bear, find you, you know?
Yeah, but some people are like, man, what's that? Is that the bone marrow right
Do I
there?
smell blood?
Like, and they want to stay and, you know, take in the moment and take pictures and analyze it. I'm like,
it's time to go, bro.
Like, you can analyze that. You're going to be in heaven. You keep saying it.
Get out of here.
But yeah, I think this concept also applies to playing with evil, right? It's, well, I think in this modern era, we've been oversaturated with inappropriate things, from blood and violence to sexuality things and
definitely.
We're over
corruption
from like birth,
right? So we're overexposed to all these things and concepts, and the society has become numb to it.
It dulls our senses,
right? So I feel like 50, 60 years ago, right? Society has totally been different.
Oh yeah,
and that's not just because of laws and stuff changing. It's because of what's become acceptable has changed, and that's come from being exposed over time to more and more inappropriate things.
Yeah, like even like shucks, even like sometimes if a woman, you know, dresses with her, you know, boobs out and stuff, right? Back in the day, I was like, oh man, she got to cover up, but now it's just like, oh, commonplace. You know what I mean?
It's almost like you're wrong now if you say something about her.
Yeah. You know, put that prayer cloth over you.
Yeah, but even then, so to your point, right? So it's like looking at like let's even like shower commercials, like our soap commercials, where like basically they're nude, right? They're not
I'm
wearing
glad
anything.
you said that because something that be getting me is like underwear ads and stuff, and I'm like, what is the difference between this and OnlyFans? Now I know there's a difference, but what I'm saying is we're still seeing
what's the conceptual difference,
right? Like in their underwear. I mean,
even the beach,
right? I was going to say that too.
So it's like basically it's all the same thing.
Like you're telling me if I just thread a floss thread up my cheeks, I'm clothed.
Well, as long as we have the beach inspectors,
2-year-olds out here.
Oh yeah, I mean the beach inspectors, the cops or whatever.
Beach inspectors,
whoever they be coming, they be looking sometimes to be like, yeah, that's too thin, or yeah, that's too.
Really, I didn't know.
Yeah, they do that. They do that.
Where they be at? I ain't never seen.
Yeah, I mean, do you know, Brandon, the
acceptable fabric level?
Yeah, the acceptable fabric level. Apparently, it has to cover
a nipple,
quote unquote. Apparently it has to cover it.
Yeah, it's got to cover.
What are we covering though? Because
it has to
down here.
The in between sections. You know what I'm saying? In between the cheeks has to be covered,
and it's going to be covered anyway.
The cheeks themselves.
The cheeks are covering that.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Sometimes it ain't. Sometimes it ain't.
All right.
So yeah, apparently, like it has to be enough fabric for those things to be hidden.
Which is anyway. I could get into that, but moving on.
Point being that this all is an inundation of being exposed to basically, like I said, inappropriate things or things that are used to be against the fabric of society.
So something I've been thinking about is, you know how like there are some people who made a lot of posts about like, oh, Hollywood is satanic, and they'll put up artists who have like whatever figures of Satan or demons and stuff in videos. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but I agree with Alex, but then my question to that has been, for me, let's take myself. I'm not gonna go watch an artist's video and then go start worshiping the devil. You know what I'm saying? Because it's the imagery is so explicit that it's kind of like, now I'm talking about myself, but I mean someone who's not as someone who's more vulnerable may fall into it. But I guess what I'm asking is, what is the path, right? Because like, let's say you go watch an artist video and they have a picture of a demon with horns. Okay, how does that translate to your day-to-day life and what you're going to then do with that?
Well, like I said, it's desensitization, right?
But
the more you see it, the more exposed to it, the less you're going to react to it.
But when are you going to have to see a demon that you're going to... Now, Alex and I could go into this too, but I'm saying if you don't have that gift, if you don't have the gift of discernment of spirits where you can't see actual demonic spirits, you're never going to actually see that.
But maybe it's preparation for people to everyday life to see it. Maybe it's preparation for demonic things to happen more in everyday life and people to not react to it.
Right, that just goes along to the ultimate deception that God gives them.
Well, what would that look like? What's an example of that happening in your day-to-day life that looks like a music video?
So let's say this, right? So let's say this. Let's say whatever. Like a good example would be, I guess, Doja Cat.
I don't want to say her name, but that was the video I was thinking about.
Yeah, so that's who cares if it's her name?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man!
I mean, I like the song, but people have issues.
I've never heard that song. I don't want to hear that song.
It's the song. The lyrics don't have anything to do with like
what she's doing,
right? But her imagery in the video is like she's like kind of depicting herself like a demon or like a
seraphim, if you will.
Yeah, or like a
well, seraphim is some angel, kind of
entity.
Well, no, the
cast down.
Yeah, a seraphim is actually like a snake, version of a snake. Like when Isaiah talks about what he saw, they're the angels.
Well, I guess they're seraphim.
Yeah.
So is it seraphim a different spelling?
Mm-mm. No, it basically just means you could say angelic snake or spiritual snake or something.
Because I thought a seraphim was an angel.
Yes.
That's why we're confused.
Mm-hmm. No, so let me go to.
It's not a different spelling, but it's a different connotation.
Is it a cast down angel? And then
that would be a Nephilim.
Right. So Isaiah chapter 6.
I thought the Nephilim were the ones that were mixed with the humans.
Yeah, the giants.
It could be interchanged.
No.
Depending on the situation and context.
So while Brandon finds that, so she's depicting herself in the video, and she has like other imagery and stuff that like is very satanic.
I mean, she's not the only one. There are various other people.
Yeah, like people have done these things.
Like what was it, Lil Nas X? Is that his name?
Right? Yeah.
And some other guy. What's his name? Some other white dude.
Not Marilyn Manson.
I forget his name.
Oh. Recently though?
Recently.
Oh, I don't know.
Semi-recently.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was like an American Idol winner or something like that. One of those guys.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Then even the Queen Bee herself.
Oh gosh.
Not even going to speak on it because I don't feel like her stuff is as extreme as people make it out to be. But I guess what I'm trying to say...
It's more subtle, but it's still touching on the same stuff.
I guess what I'm trying to say is... Maybe I'm not easily influenced, but I'm not doing nothing different with my life because Doja Cat had horns in her video. Now, some people, they might go dress up as Halloween or something like that. Now, that might open up some stuff. But I feel like you almost have to be kind of dabbling in stuff anyway if that's going to influence you.
Well, my argument is that music is the beat of the soul.
Yeah.
Right?
But that's why I'm picking this apart because I'm trying to figure out where the connective tissues are. It's like the song itself doesn't say anything about anything satanic or demonic, but the visuals are that. And so it's kind of like... So the question is it trying to be subtle, or is it trying to be obvious, or is it trying to be misleading, or is it trying to be incorporated? I think the question would be, what are the intentions of the artist? What energy are they putting into the music, regardless of the video? You don't have to watch the video if someone doesn't want to watch it. So let me put it this way. So like the same thing with like the blessing of the sage and the blessing of the corporation, right? I would think that is more. So let's say you're preparing the song to do this. In which case you have to be careful anyway, because somebody could make a video with angels in it and still have crazy intentions and be operating in demonic spirits in their song. So it's like that would mean we didn't need to be careful with anything, whether someone has satanic imagery. Yeah, sure. But that's the thing, right? The key to everything. I'm playing angel's advocate, right? Sure, yeah. But that's the point, though. Like, the tensions behind anything are the gateways to the soul. And I've definitely listened to songs and felt like, oh, okay, this doesn't feel right. Mm-hmm. Like, regardless of whatever the lyrics were, whatever. I've definitely... So, back to discernment. It's like, I think no matter what, people have to pay attention to, how does something make you feel when you listen to it or see it or do it? And what is it? Did you start noticing anything different after that? Well, I think it's a mix. I think it's, how do you feel? How does the song and the music affect you? But I think it's also like I said, the spiritual corruption of it as well. So like the spiritual corruption can be very subtle and very slow. It can. Right? So I feel like that's the hidden trap. Yeah, because I'll use it as an example. I think, for example, if you have an artist who's like an amazing singer, but all their songs are... Trash. Not trash, but they're about trash. Making like bad relationship decisions or trash. Being in woe or being whatever, like a negative romantic situation, and you're listening to that all the time, and then you out here making crazy romantic decisions, or you're starting to feel comforted in your decisions, and it's like, well, what are you exposing yourself to make you make better life decisions? But that's like a subtlety. It's like it may not be talking about the devil, but it might be encouraging you to not make good life decisions, which is then going to affect your life.
Mm-hmm.
So back to this Seraphim thing.
Sure.
So this word actually has a dual meaning,
Okay.
right? So when
I was wondering.
So you guys are correct, right? Seraph is the root word of Seraphim, which means angelic being, right? Now in Isaiah 6, 2, 3, 6, and 7, Seraphim has a different meaning, which just means fiery serpents. Right, so when this allusion that Isaiah is given, that's why you see in verse 4, or actually verse 6, where it says the seraphim flew to me, having his hand a burning coal that he had taken with the tongs from the altar. So this is like a fiery serpent, not necessarily a.
All right, I'm trying to remember because I think the Satan is referred to as a cherub at one point.
Yep.
Is he also referred to as a seraphim as well on different occasions? All right, so he's referred to as both.
Yeah, that's where in Revelation, Satan is described as a dragon. Well, that's all a snake is, just a dragon with no legs is what a snake is.
Well, that's the Eastern dragon.
Right.
If you're talking about European dragon, it's a little different. But I think the Eastern dragon is associated with the Middle East to a certain extent as well. I have to go look that up, but it might be.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think like not Lil Nas X, Travis Scott.
That's the other guy I was thinking about.
So that one really got me. Like, you talk about heebie-jeebies.
What was it? The video for something?
Yeah. So it was the whole thing was just, so he had like this little like a portal or something, right? So when you come in at the astral world, right, everybody's just like jam packed, right? But then you had to squeeze in this little portal he had to get into the venue itself, and so.
Like in real life, or like this was his music video?
No, this is real life.
Okay.
At the concert, right?
Yeah.
And so then he's on stage, and there's a portion of the, there's satanic stuff all over the place, right? It wasn't even funny.
What's an example of satanic stuff that he had?
He had like, his dancers were like wearing these kind of, costumes like demons and, red background and fire.
Okay, so he was mimicking hell.
Basically, yeah, basically. So there's a portion of the concert where he's kind of lifted up on his pedestal. And he
was on the pedestal. He put himself on the pedestal. I'm just joking.
Maybe. And it was just really kind of spooky. And somebody actually died, right? Because what happened was
is this what they were talking about? Someone died at a concert? Oh, wow.
Because everybody was just pressing to the front.
Stage.
Well, there were two different occasions where people died in concerts. I don't know if...
At his concert?
I don't know what was at his concert.
One of them was at his concert. There was another occasion where there's someone else who died at a different concert. I think it was a rapper on that one, though.
And the guy basically just got trampled to death because everybody's trying to get to Travis Scott. And so basically he's singing and it's real quiet. And everybody's kind of body surfing this guy's corpse to the rescue team. And Travis sees this and he continues singing. That's what was creepy.
Maybe he didn't realize the guy was dead.
He looked right at him. I don't know if he really knew exactly what happened.
Yeah, because maybe he thought, maybe he passed out, or maybe he's...
But you know how people were motioning him to stop.
Oh, I got you.
Motioning him to hey,
something's
we got
wrong.
A real emergency here.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen artists stop from something going on in the crowd, like a fight or, it's okay to pause.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is, if he felt anything was wrong and it's disturbing, he didn't stop.
And there was a video clip where he's actually looking. I mean, now it's thousands of people there, but he's looking at this guy. He sees them, moving him. He just keeps on going, and I'm just like, wow, that's creepy.
Well, there's a theory.
The music was just like, whew.
There was a theory that this dude was potentially a demonic sacrifice.
Right.
in this quote unquote ritual of the concert.
Mm-hmm.
That's a theory. Now, I don't know if that necessarily has any validity to it, but that's a theory that's out there.
Yeah, it's.
Well, Brandon CNC slightly believes it.
Yeah, it's got enough, validity to it. I mean, with all the stuff, I mean, just from start to finish, the whole concert was just nothing that people should have went to, but the music and this. And he wasn't the only one. There was other people that died too. And
at that show.
Mm-hmm. That's
from
why.
The
That's
same thing?
Yeah. If you look it up, Astroworld, they even got in trouble for, just the deaths that were there. And
was that the one where it was like 3 deaths?
Yeah. Because the way they designed it, everybody, I don't know, Travis Scott did something, but he basically made everybody kind of try to rush the front. So obviously you have all those people pushing against
the people people have died from Black Friday sales. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we know that it's not a good idea to pack people in a tight space or whatever he did. So that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably the creepiest thing I ever seen. And like I saw it and I'm just like but again, I wanted to see it, just, see what it was. But yeah, every time I would see it, it's just like, why did I watch this?
What is the feeling? Could you identify the feeling you get from it?
Oh yeah. It made me it got really cold in the room. Right? It got really cold and goosebumps, all that stuff. And I just, how you kind of like shiver and shake. Mm-hmm. Like
the way Alex and I were just doing 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, like that's what I was doing watching it. And I felt like I was watching on my phone and I'm like, man, one of my phone's going to stop working now because, and of course I was watching this at night right before I was going to bed.
Brandon, why you do this?
I don't know, man.
I wonder how the people who were there felt. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder if obviously they knew something was wrong if they all decided to carry the man's body to get help.
That's how jam packed it was. He couldn't. Nobody could come in with a stretcher. Yeah. So they had to like kind of body surf or crowd surf.
Crazy, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like this guy's lifeless body just like this, and concert was still going, and I'm like,
wow.
But it was almost like
I hope his family sued or something.
Yeah, but it was like Alex said, like he was the demonic sacrifice, so that's why it seemed like Travis Scott was looking like I did my, you know what I mean?
So yeah, I would say if that's what would make me feel is the real indication is your like spiritual reaction to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was something Christians should watch.
I mean, whenever I feel like people use like this creative freedom excuse to
do some things they shouldn't really be doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like,
and that Christians should endorse. Yes,
right?
Sir.
It's like I see if the theme of the show was red. Okay, fine. That's the color God created, right? Mm-hmm. But when you get into we're going to dress up as demons and depict hell or do that, it's like, okay, so now you're leaving creative freedom and you're getting into
Satanism.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Like I've heard Doja Cat say that. I don't think about this recent video, but just in general, like, oh, well, people take, like, you do something creatively and people take offense to it. And it's like, I get it, but there has to be a line. Right. Somewhere.
Well, the line is slowly disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
And
no shade. I love Doja Cat's a great, talented person, but just using her as an example.
Mm-hmm.
I know, Alex.
I'm skeptical of all these things.
I'm saying, like, you can.
To me, creativity doesn't excuse the imagery,
and that's what I'm saying.
Creativity doesn't excuse you being an artist. Doesn't excuse you. So let me put it this way: if a regular person, if I went to their house and their walls were just filled with demonic things, I would be highly concerned.
I would leave.
Exactly. Yeah. So if a regular person can't do it and get away with it, an artist shouldn't be able to do it and get away with it.
And my thing is, we know this as humans that there are certain things we draw the line with. So just like imagine if an artist had a scene of a child being raped in their music video, and they're like, "That's creative freedom." It's like, hold on, certain things that you shouldn't depict at all, whether you think it's creative or not. Right. And so it's the same thing where it's like there's reasons these boundaries and things exist. And just because you're creative doesn't mean that you should.
I mean, this goes with, like I said, some imagery shouldn't be played with. Just like I said, same thing with the Queen Bee, whatever you want to call her. Some imagery shouldn't be played with. I'm going to leave it there. That goes for all the artists out there.
I guess with her, I don't know what imagery people are upset about. Like, I don't know off the top of my head, like, what are the qualms?
I guess the one, I mean,
one of them is the different horses. Album cover, some of the different horses.
Okay.
Associated with basically the pale horses, the death horses of the apocalypse. The Pale Rider being one of them, which is basically the 4 demonic angels.
I feel like this is a little gray area because she's also from Houston, and they're known for horses and horseback riding. Is that just
an excuse to do it?
But what I'm saying is, like, it's gray area because it also could have nothing to do with that. She may not have ever even read the Book of Revelations. But she might just be like...
But she claims to be...
A lot of people Christian. Have never...
Yeah, she claims to be Christian. She claims to have the background.
But we know a lot of
sure.
churches are different in how they teach things.
But even then, this is like... Okay.
Like, I have grown up in church. I don't know off the top of my head the colors of the horses in Revelation.
Let's draw some parallel...
You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying, but let's draw some parallel lines here.
Yeah.
So, what about her recent dance manager who left?
Okay.
And her story is about stuff that she was doing.
Oh, is this the one who claimed that she cast a spell on her or something like that?
Yes, her and her ex-drummer.
Like, could be disgruntled. I don't know.
So, sure. So, but if there's too many coincidences, it's what, Brandon?
It's not a coincidence.
Exactly. It's no longer a coincidence. Okay. So, first you have her dance, first you have her drummer, her ex-drummer who left, claiming similar things. Then you have her head dancer, instructor, wherever she left, claiming similar things. Mm-hmm. Then you have the imagery of the songs and the music videos and everything else.
What imagery? I guess other than the horses, like, I don't know.
I mean, there's some other stuff too.
Okay.
And then even the song with the church girl song.
Even the Illuminati.
Even the Illuminati stuff, right? Even...
I feel like some people be boofing up this Illuminati thing.
Whether they are or not.
Because it's almost like, why is no one... in the corporate world in the Illuminati? Why are there no
Maybe
warriors?
They are.
But that's what I'm saying is I feel like people, they give certain labels to things because those are the people we love and see. But it's like, if it's a thing, then it should be a thing across the board. Like, no one's calling anyone up and saying, my boss is in the Illuminati. And it's like, well, you just got fired. And so you're kind of like, are they in the Illuminati or are you just
the Illuminati is associated with the music industry and entertainment industry in general. It's not necessarily
because we associated it or because it is associated. That's what I'm saying.
Maybe both.
Is it something we're just making up because these are people who we see and love? And
well, let me put it this way.
Because sometimes it's given.
Well, some of it might be conspiracy, but I'm saying too much, and there's too many coincidences happening for it not to have some validity.
The bottom of what I'm saying is that humans we're made to worship. We're supposed to worship God, but we worship celebrities instead. Right?
Well, people, I don't worship no celebrities.
We as in not as us in this room.
I know, but in general, yes.
So people are already giving too much of themselves to worshiping these celebrities, right? And so I feel like in that, it turns into this weird, like, because you can't understand their wealth or because you feel a way about their influence or whatever, then it's like, well, they're in the Illuminati. And it's like, well, based on what? You know what I mean? Like, you never hear it about a president. You never hear it about...
Serena, all right, let me explain.
I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying that I'm starting to question the people saying it because it's not consistent.
Hold on. I'm about to explain this. There's 3 different categories here. There's 3 different organizations here. And all these different organizations have different spheres of influence. And maybe or maybe not, they don't, step into the other people's influence. So, like I said, Illuminati is typically associated with the entertainment / music industry.
Yeah, but... my question is, did we create the association, or does it actually exist?
Hold on, let me explain all the other ones. So then we have the Freemasons, typically, or whatever organization the Freemasons have become, whether the original one or not. Those are typically associated with churches / government, right? Or people of influence. That's typically associated with the Freemasons. Then you have basically the hidden state, quote unquote, which is people. The deep state, or maybe even that, right? Partially. Mm-hmm. So then you have like the deep state or the hidden state, which is associated with all the black book stuff and all the hidden agendas associated with either high influential people or people with a lot of money and power. Mm-hmm. So if you look at this as an overall thing, then it's like these are different organizations with different spheres of influences potentially, right?
Right, and then so I get the government church blah, blah, blah. I get that very tangible influence and the purposes that those could be operating in. What I don't understand as much as is for the Illuminati, to what end? It's like, what are they getting out of
think about like
these
this, right?
entertainers being an Illuminati? You know what I mean?
Well, think about it like this, right? If you control the entertainer, you control what they say and what they do and what they're putting out there, then you control the populace who follows them, right?
Right, but what is the, like, give me an example of something Beyonce's doing or saying that people are, now she is influential, right? She said, wear silver, everyone wearing silver. Like, we get that. But my question is, what does wearing silver, for example, how does that benefit the Illuminati? You know, it's like,
well, let me put it this way. Maybe not everything they do influences the Illuminati. But like I said, if you train your dog to say jump when you say jump, and it jumps when you say jump, every time you give it a treat, then the last time you say, hey, jump over the cliff, it might just jump over the cliff.
Yeah, but I'm like, we have yet to see that. So I guess I don't get people's... It's like, if y'all think she's an Illuminati, don't listen to her. Or don't... You know what I mean? It's like...
but some people think it, some people don't. Some people don't care, and they listen anyway, right? Well, I'm saying the people who do care, who are like, yeah, I ain't about that, whatever she's doing, because it looks shady, then that's on them, right? Mm-hmm. And the people who say, I see what she's doing look a little shady, but I'm going to listen anyway, I'm going to do it anyway, that's on them.
Because I think what I'm disappointed in is that people will sit all day and say, Beyonce's an Illuminati. But y'all don't vote. Y'all don't care what these politicians are doing. Y'all don't care what your spouse is doing. Y'all don't care what your boss is like. It's like y'all are hyper focused.
Well, to me,
on this one
that's the
person.
wrong. That's the wrong outlook. Then, if you're concerned about the Illuminati, quote unquote, you should be concerned about the deep state. You should be concerned about
that's the kind of what I'm getting at.
Right? You should be concerned about all of them,
right?
Not necessarily just one person in the supposed Illuminati.
And that's what I'm saying.
But, yeah, but my thing is you should be overall concerned about overall things that are concerning.
Because my thing is it's a sphere of influence. It's kind of like I don't in my personal day-to-day life, I'm more concerned about who the president is and who the local politicians are than what Beyonce doing at her concert. You know what I mean? It's like, sure, if people want to feel away, but it's like that ain't really touching my day-to-day existence.
Well, I think you also got to look at really started it though was there was an article I think by Jackie Hill Perry. I don't know if you're
I know. I just realized who she is. I just discovered her recently.
So she was the one that did a piece on Beyonce and Kalani. I don't know if you guys listen to Kalani.
Yeah.
So
I've never heard one of her songs, but go ahead.
Kalani and Beyonce.
I'll show you later.
She basically said to both of them that their music is either demonically inspired or is heavily influenced demonic. Their music, right? And so, of course, a lot of people, she made waves with the statement because, Beyonce is a prominent, artist, and Jackie Hill Perry is, a prominent Bible teacher, right? So, and they're both, black females. So, just like, oh my goodness, So, I get what she's saying, but
what's an example of something that she's saying is inspired by demonology?
Really, all she's talking about is this sexual stuff in her music, which okay, but I think what people fail to do is again, kind of just zero in on Beyonce, right? Beyonce's not the only one doing this. And nor is, okay, hey, if you don't like it, then just don't listen to it, right? Don't.
Like me,
don't,
I don't listen to it.
Because then it almost comes off Beyonce makes a gazillion dollars, right? So it almost comes across as you're just jealous.
Yeah,
right? You're just trying to be on somebody's parade, which if you're doing that, then that's going to be obvious in because, even in the article, there's nothing that really says this is demonic.
And that's kind of why I'm picking it, because it's like I listen to her music and I'm not an expert in anything, but I've never heard her say anything that made me feel like, well, whoa, wait a minute, that ties back to this, or that doesn't feel right, or that. So it's like I don't know what people are pulling at that they're saying that's demonic, and it's like, well, give me some tangible facts.
Well, I guess to me, right, I guess on my few stances. First of all, I don't really listen to secular music in general. I don't care if it's Beyonce or
Alice don't even know enough names.
Exactly, I don't even know the names.
Like Kalani, who's that?
I've never heard songs, probably. So just saying that, I don't listen to that genre or that category of music anyway, right? Because I feel most of it is unproductive to a lot of things.
Now, how about this? Now, this might be a little spicy, right? The things I've heard Kirk Franklin say, right? Like, I'm the goat, worship the goat, all that nonsense.
I'm the what?
Like, basically,
I'm the goat, worship the goat.
Yeah.
The goat?
The goat.
Oh, greatest of all time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's
so
really,
if you look at it from, or go ahead though.
But basically, like, he basically makes this claim
slightly arrogant, but okay.
that the lamb bows down to the goat. Right? Now, we know the lamb is really a picture of Christ. And the goat is a picture of, obviously, unregenerate Christian.
A.K.A. the devil.
Unregenerate people, right?
Which
Satan.
is the devil, Satan.
So he's making an argument that, well, the lamb's going to bow down to the goat. And we're like, you know what I mean? Now, that's demonic.
Did he say that? Or
He literally said that. Like, it's in a music video he does. Now, I've never heard Beyonce say anything like that.
Right.
So my thing is, hey, let's turn our attention from Beyonce to Kirk Franklin, who is now they were both affirm that they're Christians, right? But I would say Kirk Franklin has a more a larger impact on most people. I would say than Beyonce because he's been singing
Christian people.
Maybe most Christian people, maybe most secular people, right? They
I would definitely say Beyonce has more influence than Kirk Franklin.
Yeah,
I mean now maybe, but
Kirk Franklin has more, weight in the Christian community, like in terms of far-reaching the Christian community. But if Kirk Franklin said everyone wear green to my album viewing, people probably not even gonna get that message.
Like green.
They're gonna be like, I don't feel like it's like Beyonce could say like anything, not anything.
I mean, basically anything at this
point. I don't
point.
want to say anything because we don't know that yet, but
it's getting there.
I would definitely say she has more influence than him. But to your point, that's what I'm saying is that I've never heard her say like what you just said. Kirk Franklin said.
So a question then, right? She claims to be a Christian. Is her songs and music in general reflect that?
Because she's not a gospel artist.
Hold on. Why we separate this?
Right.
So hold on. Why we separate this?
Because the reality is that there's people who believe in God, who grew up in church, who try to be good people, who believe in doing the right thing, but they're not going to fashion their whole lives. This is just reality. Yeah. I'm not saying that is how it should be, but they're like, if they're a painter, they're not going to have Jesus in all their paintings.
I'm not saying you have to.
But I'm saying, like, to answer your question, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of how it plays out for some people, where it's like, okay, if I'm a producer or if I'm pick any other artistic field, I can't think anything beyond being a painter. But if I'm a fashion designer, I may not necessarily weave across into every piece. Like, you can if that's what you want to do.
What I'm saying is you don't have to tip your hat to Christianity every time you do something artistic. But what I'm saying is what you're doing artistic shouldn't be contradictory to Christianity if you're claiming to be Christian.
I don't see how...
I guess this is the thing. Beyonce isn't, when you look at the Christian world, music circles, right? She's not somebody's saying, yeah, man, she's putting out Christian music, right?
I'm not
Franklin is.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I'm not making an argument.
Like, I'll say this. In terms of music, I wouldn't put, like, let's take a Future or someone like that. I wouldn't put what he's saying on the same level as, like, what Beyonce's saying. Like, he is openly advocating debauchery. I don't know. I've never heard Beyonce openly advocate debauchery. She's been married for long as most of the time we've known her. But I'm saying, like, I wouldn't say her lyrics per se contradict Christianity. Like, she's married. She talking about her life. And so there's not really anything in that that's like, oh, that's against Christianity. Now, some of these rap artists, 100%. Like, there's some rap songs where I'm like, I would not even listen to a certain rap song because it's like, it's way over here to the left. So I feel like Beyonce is not I wouldn't put her at the level where I feel like listening to her songs are compromising my Christianity. Now, there's some female R&B artists where it's like, okay, I'm not getting anything out of that. But her, I wouldn't put her in that category.
Yeah, I would say Kirk Franklin is more dangerous just because he embodies Christianity to a certain degree.
All right, sure. I'll concede that one. But what about the idolization?
Finally.
No, I'm conceding to
Yeah, we can. And that's why I said is people worship. Now, like, I don't worship Beyonce. I admire her. I respect her. She's amazing. She's talented. But I'm not like all hell, like
get the beehive.
Yeah, like she's amazing. Love her. But I don't, there's no one that I really am out here like worshiping. I'm just not.
I'm not expecting that from you.
I know, but to answer your question, like I'm not that kind of person. I'm talking
about the other people.
Do people do it? For sure. That's what I was saying earlier. Is we humans will find people to worship when it's not God. Now that we can say is an issue, but that also doesn't mean that she's demonic because people are choosing to do that.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm saying playing the imagery play is dangerous.
I don't know what people be talking about with the imagery. I heard what you said about the horses, but I'm like, the woman's from Houston. They be riding horses. Like, that's a real thing. Yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't know off the top of my head the horses from the Bible and what colors and like that could be a coincidence.
I do think people may read too much in it and stuff. Like
people do that with celebrities all the time. Like they
potentially yes. Stuff. But what I'm saying is, I'm just putting it on the table. I'm not saying I necessarily believe either one way or the other. But on the table, like I said, the imagery itself is a dangerous play. Now, sure, it might be totally innocent.
I feel like intention's important.
Yeah,
and we don't know. I know,
sure.
Intentions.
But it might be totally innocent. It might not be. What I'm saying, the possibility that it's not, is still there.
I think people,
especially
put energy to what they want.
Hold on. All I'm saying with the other supposed evidence, it should at least be on the table.
What's the evidence again?
The drummer and the dancer.
That's not technically evidence. Those are stories with no evidence. Like there's no evidence of her casting a spell on somebody.
I said supposed evidence.
Right, alleged. So that's not evidence.
They could also be, disgruntled.
Yeah, because someone could be like,
hold on.
Serena, cast a spell on me.
Like I said, all I'm saying is, the possibility has to be on the table.
Right, but I also think we got to add the fact that sometimes people will, because they're disgruntled, they'll add a note because they know the narrative already exists. And so they say, there's word that she a witch. I'm going to say she cast a spell on me. Whether it happened or not. But it's like they know that that's a thing. So they'll pick at that and say like, oh yeah, she did this. And it's like, did she? Because she also prays before every performance.
Sure.
Oh, Beyonce.
You know what I'm saying? No one ever talks about that. But there's footage for her doing that. That's in her documentaries. That's in the behind the scenes. Like we've seen that too. To God, not to whatever made up entity. Like we've seen her do that. And so it's kind of like, that's why I say, like, what's consistent.
Right. All I'm saying is, it has to be on the table. That's all I'm saying. Well, this has been a interesting conversation. And we can maybe revisit it again some other time.
Oh, yeah. After people hear this one, they're going to be like, we need to have Serena here every week.
Oh, no, they'd be like, get her off because she's defending the queen bee.
All I'm saying is it has to be on the table. I don't care either way that much because I don't listen to her anyway.
But I think it needs to be well-rounded, right? Like if people are going to dismiss her, well, you got to have proof. And even if you have proof, it's like, well, wouldn't you want Beyonce to change, right? If you thought she was doing something wrong, wouldn't you want her to, go back to Christ, right? Go back to that foundation she had from her childhood. You know what I mean?
Yes, that would be the hope.
Yeah.
Now, I'll say this. If I see somebody post a picture of an altar or something, which we've seen, I'm going to name names, then I'll be suspicious of that artist. Because you have a whole altar in your house.
Yeah.
And it's not to God.
Oof.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that kind of stuff is like, okay.
Well, like I said, everything's on the table until proven otherwise.
On the table. Did we wrap up everything with the concept? What's the final verdict on demons and spiritual encounters and entities? And I guess we'll have to cover witches and warlocks.
Part 2.
Another
part. We have that part 2.
Yeah.
I mean, this is all going to be in one part. We'll do another part later. But yeah, I guess the wrap up is be careful what you do. Be careful what you expose yourself to. All these things are real. Pray, cover yourself, and pray for your family. And I think that's a good wrap up. Yes. So anyway, thank you for joining us on the Church Bros Podcast. A special thanks to our guest today, Serena. A little clap, 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 clap.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll see you next time. with maybe we're going to cover something else, or maybe we'll go back to the fruits of the spirit. So either way, we'll see you next time.